Hello and welcome to the Tom's Hardware Show. I'm your host Sharon, and today we're discussing Patriot's new VP4300 SSD and putting AMD and Intel's current flagships against each other. So yes, everyone, we are live and we are taking your questions from the audience. So if you have anything you'd like to ask, just drop your questions in the chat on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll be discussing questions at the end of the show. So joining me today is Paul Alcorn, Tom's Hardware Deputy Managing Editor. What's up, Paul?
Hello, how's it going?
Doing good. I'm also super excited to have a couple Patriot execs here. Les Henry, VP of North America and South America Sales. How are you, Les?
Great. Thanks for having us on.
Awesome. And finally, welcome to the show, Roger Shinmoto, VP of Product. What's going on, Roger?
How you doing? Thanks for having us.
Yeah, definitely. So Patriot today revealed its latest PCIe 4.0 M.2 SSD, the Patriot Viper VP4300. So we actually have a short clip that'll give you the 411 on what this new drive's about. So let's check that out. Cool. So for those who couldn't see that, maybe you're listening to the show as a podcast. That little preview pointed to the VP4300 packing read speeds up to 7,400 megabytes per second and write speeds up to 6,800 megabytes per second. We've got a Gen 4 controller from Integrit, and this is available in 1 terabyte or 2 terabytes, 2 heat shields included, aluminum and graphene, particularly for smaller builds, and finally a 5-year warranty. So Les, what have you got to tell us about this new drive?
Yeah, so we're very excited with this launch today on the VP4300. It is our second generation of Gen 4x4 drives that we've launched. And one of the feedback we got from our previous M.2s using heat shields was the heat shield doesn't always work depending on what application you have. So with the 4300 launch, our engineers decided to come up with a solution that gives the end user the option to choose. So out of the box, you're going to get a bare bone, I don't know if you can see that, a bare bone SSD out of the box. They also have the choice to use a heavy duty aluminum heat shield for better heat dissipation. And we're also including a thin graphene heat shield for small spaces, depending on your application. Basically, the idea was to give the end user the best option depending on their work environment. Okay, the other feature I really want to talk about is the performance. As you mentioned, I don't know if you can see the screen over here.
Yep.
So this benchmark is based on Crystal Disk Mark. We're able to hit speeds over 7,400 megabytes per second read and over 6,800 megabytes per second write. So these are some of the fastest speeds we've hit in our lab with any device we've tested. Also, if you go out and look in the market, you really don't see these speeds out there. So we're very excited with this launch. Product's currently available today at Newegg and Amazon. And that pretty much covers it for the 4300 line.
Can you actually, is it possible to get closer to those numbers? There you go, we're zooming. Just so we can see it a little more clearly. Cool. Awesome. So one of the things, especially in that video we just saw, and within the SSD is an Integrit controller, the IG5236. Paul, you're an expert in the SSD space in general. What's sort of the reputation for an Integrit controller compared to some of the alternatives?
You know, it's actually kind of funny. The first time that I ever ran into the integrate controller was through Abram Pilch, our boss. We were at CES at it was CES 2020, I think. It was in 2020, a long time ago, pre-pandemic.
Not 2020.
Yeah, man, that was a great year. Anyway, he messaged me and he's like, "Hey," or maybe he called me. I don't recall, but I was elsewhere. And he was at a booth and he had come across it. He's like, "Hey, have you heard of this new controller?" And he's like, they say it does 7 gigabytes a second, right? And I think at the time they were targeting 1 million IOPS. And I had never heard of it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Are there like some extra zeros here, right? Because that's way faster than anything at the time. And that was the first that I ever heard of it. So Abram had himself a really big score. He actually wrote a news article about it. So he uncovered that, and I actually went over there to check it out and talk to the people at the booth about the controller because it is so interesting. So that's what I know about it. I mean, I know that originally a lot of the PCIe 4.0 SSDs that came to market were actually not designed for PCIe 4. They were just PCIe 3, and they changed the PHY that allows it to communicate with the SSD, but they didn't change the actual controller logic like the brains. So you really weren't getting the full benefit of PCIe 4.0. And I do know that the integrate, it's codenamed the Rainier, however you would like to pronounce that, is designed from the ground up for PCIe 4.0. And that's why we see those kind of speeds, that Abram, even he was pretty surprised about it, and I was like, wow. So it's a pretty interesting controller, right?
Yeah, we're very excited about it.
So we have somebody asking about pricing. So we have $250, right, MSRP for the 1 terabyte, $500 for the 2 terabytes. Paul, what's like a typical price for, let's say, a good 2 terabyte M.2 PCIe 4 drive like this?
Well, that's always going to depend. Okay, are we going bargain basement and getting like, there are some strange SSDs with are we looking for a Banggood SSD or something that's super duper cheap? It's literally a brand. There's some other more colorful names out there, believe it or not. Or, are you going for the super high end? Now, when you're looking towards kind of the target range of this type of a drive, or are you even going for RGB, right? That's going to add some cost. It depends on where you're at. Kind of in this type of a performance range, you're probably looking at, I would say the 980 Pro, WD Black SN850 are going to be the real big challengers here. Right now, they are probably, they're significantly cheaper for a 2 terabyte drive. And, that was something I did want to ask you guys about. The pricing out of the gate is probably about $100 higher for a 2 terabyte drive than what we're seeing at MSRP. And I know that isn't entirely uncommon. I mean, when companies release these drives, because NAND the pricing changes so quickly, sometimes the price is a little disjointed at launch, like the WD Black SN850, which is one of your primary competitors. When it first came out, it was really, the pricing was a lot higher than everybody expected, but like 2 days later, it was lower. Do you guys foresee any adjustments in price in the near future on this? I think you're muted.
NAND was a lot higher. It looks like our pricing has already come down from our launch, because I think the 2 terabytes at $450, and the 1 terabyte, I believe, is $225. Yeah. So, it's, again, like you mentioned, it really depends on the NAND market. So, yeah, I do see it falling in line with those guys.
Yeah, it is super duper volatile. One thing too that I think a lot of people would be surprised with these drives is, when we're talking about the different classes of drives, one thing that's a real big feature that a lot of people overlook is endurance. And this drive actually has, in our SSD review, right? I edited the article, but he tested it and wrote it, Sean. He called out the fact that it has more endurance than both the WD Black SN850 and the Samsung 980 Pro, both of which are, your basic your biggest competitors there. Can you guys say anything about that, or is that just kind of par for the course, I guess?
A lot of that has to do, obviously, with the integrated controller. I believe those guys started out mainly as an enterprise controller. So I think they take some of that technology and they applied it to this clan controller that they developed.
Yeah. So it's really good on endurance, and that's definitely something to where people, if they're looking for a drive like this, with the huge sequential speeds now, it's rated for 7.4 gigabytes a second and 6.8 read-write. We hit right at that, a little bit over on both, no problems at all. So if you're doing like 4K video, 8K video processing, those type of like semi-professional workflows where you're moving a whole ton of data in those, PCIe 4.0 is going to be just absolutely wonderful if you're actually using it. Like a lot of the early drives didn't really use the interface, the PCIe 4.0 drives. And a lot of times we get people who are like, PCIe 4, you don't need it, because it doesn't necessarily load games faster. Well, there is more life than games. And professionals or even semi-professionals, or like some guy who's doing some YouTube streaming, or whatever. This seems like a pretty good drive for that, especially because of the high endurance and the high throughput. So that's kind of my thought on it. I think that's a really good niche for you guys as well.
Good.
Yeah. Thanks for the input.
So in regard to the different heat shields available, can you talk a little bit more about that, why you decided to include them and how they differ?
Yeah. The main reason we did it, like I mentioned, was, I don't know if I have a motherboard here. Most of the motherboards now come equipped with their own heatsink for the M.2. And if you have an attached heat shield, say like this, that's been common for other Viper M.2 lines. It becomes an issue with these motherboards if you want to use the specific slot that's closest to the CPU. The only way to get around it is take off the heat shield that comes with the motherboard and use this. So the issue was, not all users like that. I mean, we had some users say, no, I'd rather use, I'd rather use the motherboard heatsink as opposed to this heatsink. So the thought was, like, instead of creating multiple lines, we're going to create one line that fits all solutions. So it's easier for the end user if they want to go plain and use this under the heatsink with the motherboard, they can. Or we include the heavy-duty heatsink if they'd rather use this instead. And then the concept on the graphene heat shield, the very thin one, I don't think I showed you the side angle, is for tight spaces. And I know there's a few notebook platforms that are coming out that may support Gen 4x4. This would be an ideal solution for that. That was the thought process behind that.
So does that add to the price at all, the inclusion of multiple heat shields?
A little bit. I mean, not much, but yeah, of course, there's going to be a little bit of a price adder on that.
Okay, fair enough. So like Paul said, we've reviewed this drive. Definitely go to tomshardware.com if you want to take a look at our in-depth testing and analysis and all of that. But looking at that review, one of the things that we've noticed was that the drive is spec'd to sustain 800,000 random read-write IOPS. We hit 371,000 and 601,000 respectively under heavy load. What do you, Les, what do you make of that? Is that expected? Is that expected to improve? What can you tell us?
There's a couple issues. I mean, obviously, not every motherboard is created equal. So the motherboard CPU combo will affect that. And I do expect it to improve with firmware. Again, and I think it also depends on which test you're running and the environment of the test based on the speeds. I don't have that in front of me from Taiwan. Roger, have you seen that one?
No, but this is a new product launch, and the market feedback we get always gets looped back to the engineers, and then they go back and try and refine either through firmware or component selections, try and solve these issues. So it's good feedback to hear, and we appreciate it, and we're definitely going to loop it back to our engineers and see what they say about it.
Yeah, one thing I noticed is I read the article, and then of course this morning I'm looking around at what our peers slash competitors in our own sphere are doing, making sure that, what we're seeing is lining up with what other people are seeing as well. And I did notice that a few sites were able to hit higher on random. I believe it was random right. We only hit 301, and some other people hit 640 there. So they did hit a bit higher. Now they're using, of course, my first thing I'm like is, okay, what are they testing with? They're using different motherboards. So when this isn't entirely uncommon with SSD launches, just so the folks at home know, especially firmwares mature rapidly in the days after launch. So, we may have ran into something there. I mean, 640 is still below the spec, but we have seen things like this, and we'll be retesting as new firmwares come out and kind of keep you updated and let you know where that's at. So
great.
And one thing that I would like to call out real fast about this drive is I can't really think of anybody that offers you two different heatsink options. Now, we did have a recent drive where the heatsink that comes with the drive is so thick that not only can you not use the motherboards thing, of course, but you can't even snap your GPU down in the socket. And if you tried to take off the controller, like our guy tried to take it off, like literally almost snapped the SSD in half because the adhesive was so strong. So you guys provide options so you can make the decision beforehand, but what if later you're going to take it off? I mean, is the adhesive like that restrictive, or have you guys actually tried taking them off?
I've actually was able to take it off. When I got the first sample, I was kind of playing around with it. I was able to pull it off after I had it on there.
Okay, cool. All right.
So our engineers designed the extruded aluminum heat shield to be reusable. So the adhesive backing that they use still conducts thermal energy to the shield, but if you wanted to change it out for some reason or go back to the motherboard heat shield, you can remove it carefully, but it is designed to be removable. The graphene heat shield, on the other hand, that's more of a permanent solution. So you really kind of want to know that this is the shield you're going to want to use, and we advertise it like that. But it is really good for the tighter spaces, say a laptop or a notebook slot.
What would you think of you have componentry? This is double-sided, correct? There's components on both sides, right?
This is a double-sided module.
Yeah.
It is double-sided, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So just making sure before I say something stupid here, but what I was wondering is there a big benefit to maybe using both sides of it? In some cases, or using the graphene on the bottom and the one on the top. Is it designed to accommodate that? Is that the intention in some cases, or not?
We never really thought about it like that. We did actually put in our installation guide. You can use both shields, but they're intended to be on the same side. I'm not really sure if space considerations I think most motherboards would allow the graphene heat shield on the bottom side, judging by the PCIe slot, but we never really thought about it that way.
There should be space for it, and I'm the kind of guy who, if I can do it, I'm going to do it. You know what? I can use that too. I thought it. But
typically on the
if you could take it off, because I would really hate to drop like $300 on an SSD with a really bling, RGB, active cooling, heat sink, and then get it and not be able to drop my GPU on there. That would be pretty. That would be pretty.
Yeah, that is a lesson we learned way back with the launch of the VPN 100. Our very first 3x4 solution. Yeah. So, the engineers take these lessons to heart, and every iteration we try and improve upon the design.
Cool.
Yeah, and one other thing our reviewer pointed to is how good looking this drive is. So that would be particularly unfortunate if it got marred in some way.
Yes. He liked the view of it, and he is extremely picky. So
yeah, on SSD looks.
Yes.
Which I think M.2 drives have like an advantage there. They're so cute anyway to start. I think they're one of the best looking components, but that's just me. So if you have any questions on the drive, definitely drop them in. I see Ruru too already submitted one. We'll be getting to the questions at the end of the show. But for now, I want to kick it over to Roger for a look at how 2021 is shaping up. What are you seeing, Roger?
Yeah, so 2021, I mean, in terms of SSDs, the SSD market is still going strong for us. We're still seeing increased sales there. We're noticing a definite trend toward these PCIe NVMe solutions as far as SSDs go, which is very exciting for us because with the higher performance envelopes associated with them, we're able to develop products like the VP4300 here. But, at the same time, we're not going to defocus on SATA drives. SATA is still a very important product out in the market from a cost perspective. But we feel that we've, done pretty much everything we can as far as practical limits in terms of performance, the sequential read-write and IOPS. So we're really just going to focus on capacity for those lines. So in the near future, we'll be, or not in the near future, I'm sorry, but in the future, we'll be, working on 4 terabyte solutions, 8 terabyte solutions as the high density NAND becomes available.
What do you think of like PCIe 4.0? I mean, we know that's coming. Intel has Alder Lake is coming towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
There's definitely server stuff that's also going to be out at the end of the year now. Of course, it's going to add a lot of cost, and it's going to be one of those things where people say, "Oh, it doesn't load games faster," but to some guy who's over there ripping 8K video and doing real-time transcodes, he's, it's a huge difference. It should be a huge difference. Have you guys heard anything there? Sure.
At our market level, we haven't really looked into the PCIe 5.0 standard yet. I mean, we're, still jazzed about the 4.4 or 4.0 solutions and what they offer. I'm sure at some point, we're going to be looking at that and seeing how our market can benefit from it and then try and develop products around that.
Cool.
Yeah. And then,
you're muted.
A little later this year, in terms of our DRAM products, we will be launching a new DRAM kit if you want to hear about that.
DDR5?
Yeah, believe it or not, that's what I asked when I was muted. So.
Sorry. Yeah, so Paul, I mean, no, it's not DDR5 yet. This is still a DDR4 kit. It's more of a product refresh of an existing line. So we're coming out, in the near future with a Viper Elite 2 kit, which is still DDR4. It's a bit of a product refresh of our Viper Elite kits that have been out in the market for about 6 years now. And engineering team decided it was time to give it a facelift. So they went out and designed a brand new heat spreader from the ground up. It's a really nice red and black design, very aggressive styling, well suited for the overclocking market. And then we added 4,000 megahertz modules to the lineup as well to kind of expand on the speed range there. These aren't our fastest kits. That title belongs to our Viper Steel. But still, these are, a great choice for maybe the DIYer who's doing a first-time build or just, someone looking to upgrade their standard spec DRAM and get something a little faster without breaking the bank.
So with DDR4, the 4000 is kind of the sweet spot right now for AMD systems. Are you guys, working? Are they kind of aiming them at AMD or just anything, pretty much?
These are aimed for both AMD and Intel platforms.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And do you have any? I think you said May is when this is expected to release. Do you know pricing at all?
Pricing I leave up to last. Just like the NAND, DRAM pricing is so volatile. I mean, we can quote a price today and it might change by May. So, they'll be competitive. Again, these aren't the highest end solutions we have. They're geared more for the entry level and price minded sector. So they'll be very affordable.
So just out of curiosity, we've been reporting. I mean, we all know like the world of hardware is just in trouble right now. But there have been, generally, like, come on, right? But they have been saying that memory pricing is starting to go up. Have you guys seen anything like that, or any I don't know if necessarily they're predicting shortages with memory, but definitely the prices have went up. You guys seeing that at all?
Oh, absolutely. They've been going up for a couple months now. And then allocations have been tight. So, yeah, we've been seeing it.
Yeah. Man, it just doesn't get better, does it?
Yeah. That's all industries, right? I mean, you look at the auto industry, the GPU industry, they're all getting hammered right now.
Talk about GPUs. If people start throwing tomatoes at us. Everybody's so disappointed.
Yeah.
Well, one quick question I wanted to bring up in terms of SATA drives. Roger, you mentioned, you guys are still going to be working on those coming forward, and, we talk about budgets. Paul, I'm just curious what you're seeing. How popular are those types of drives still these days among
SATA?
Yeah.
Well, SATA, SATA's not going to go anywhere. It would not shock me at all if SATA is. I'm sure I could dig up a number somewhere to tell you that they're still shipping order of magnitude more SATA than they are M.2 because they're cheap. But M.2 is getting to the point to where I think if you're really down in the value end, the bang goods of the market with M.2s, or I don't even know if they make an M.2. I'm just being funny, but you're down there on the super low end of the market with M.2. I think that there's some crossover there with SATA drives these days. I would recommend always an M.2 if you can do it, of course. But when you're looking at SATA, SATA's going to be around for a long time.
So, yeah, I agree.
Especially, they are talking about doing NVMe hard drives, which you're looking at about 2 years, but they're actually plumbing in NVMe for hard drives. But as long as hard drives remain on SATA, it's going to be just like IDE. It's going to be there for a long, long, long time. So.
For what it's worth, SATA consumer drives aren't nearly as cute as M.2 SSDs.
Yeah. I've got some old schools. When they were 3.5 inch for the SSDs. I mean, they got big heat sinks on them and everything. Anyway.
Those are the old PATA drives?
Huh?
Are they the old PATA?
No,
Yeah,
they're appliance. You could probably find a review I wrote about them years and years ago, but they are, appliance.
Paul's been all around.
The actual name, I don't remember. The Pliant Lightnings.
Awesome. Well, if anyone else has questions for our Patriot friends here, drop them in. And while you guys are getting your final questions in, I want to take a quick look at the latest battle going down at Tom's Hardware. Of course, Paul is involved. He pit the AMD Ryzen 9 5900X against the Intel Core 11900K for a CPU face-off. Paul, what happened with that battle, and which chip walked out alive?
Well, one chip almost started on fire. That was almost started on fire. But
I'm like, oh, got interesting.
Reputation for its power consumption. They are pushing the limits, people. They have to, because AMD is extremely competitive. So Intel is trying very, very desperately to match the 5900X. That's where they're landing on the pricing against the 5900X. I mean, at the end of the day, price is the measuring stick. Companies try to position products in all sorts of silly ways, but it boils down to what costs the same is the ultimate measuring stick. So when we look at the 530 to 550 price range, which is the highest Intel goes because 8 cores is what they've got. They can't go higher. So they're ending up at toe-to-toe with the 12-core CPU from AMD, and that is the 5900X. Now, the 11900K is surprisingly good for what it is. They removed 2 cores compared to the prior generation, and they snapped in a new architecture for the first time in 5 years, about time. But it still comes on 14 nanometer. So they didn't have enough room. So instead of having 10 cores like they did the last time with their top end part, now they only have 8. Now, compared against the previous gen 10 core versus the new 8 core, they're really close when it comes to multi-threaded work, but they're not competing against themselves. They're competing against a 12 core Zen 3 processor that smokes it in anything threaded. Any type of rendering or encoding, I mean, that's just too much for it to overcome. So, you know, they have to have something to sell it for, you know, if it's getting beat in all types of threaded applications. So where the 11900K is strong is in single threaded performance, but it's not, you know, it is faster in some workloads, in single threaded workloads. It is actually faster than the Ryzen 3s. I'm looking at the chart to make sure, but no, because it is surprising. So when you look at things like web browsers that are inherently single threaded, real lightly threaded workloads, things like lame encoders and the things that we look at to measure performance, it is actually faster in single core than any of the AMD Ryzen 5000 chips. Now, normally when we see that, that carries over to gaming, right? So if we see a real big lead in single thread performance, typically I expect to see a big lead in gaming, but that doesn't happen with the 11900K. It is behind the 5900X, not by a lot. It's close. It's close enough to where most people aren't going to notice, to be honest with you. A few frames per second here or there. And it varies by game. In some games, it's faster. But the problem is, it's not fast enough. It's not faster enough than the 5900X, if I'm just going to create my own word to justify it.
You're putting it in layman's terms.
Well, that's correct. It's not fast, you know, it's not faster than the 5900X by a large enough margin for me to say that the price tag is justified, especially considering what you give up on the multi-threaded side and the fact that it will pull up to 335 watts or more while it's operating. That means you need a big cooler. You know, we saw 295 watts in one test, which is pretty surprising. So.
Well, for what it's worth, I did a quick search before the show. I could not immediately find the 5900X in stock online, but I could find the 11900K.
Yeah. So that is the big thing, and that's something that we definitely touch on in our conclusion is, hey, the Ryzen 9 5900X. So we have 6 categories. We've got features, specifications, gaming, applications, overclocking, power consumption, pricing. The 5900X wins in 5 of those. One of them is a tie, so it wins in 4. And the Core i9 11900K wins 1 and ties in another. So the 5900X is the superior chip, but none of that matters because you can't buy it. Frankly, if you can't buy it, doesn't matter. It's unobtaining. Intel is absolutely, you know, has better stock. We have started to see the 11900K go in and out of stock, but you can still find it. The 5900X you haven't been able to find, especially at any kind of reasonable pricing, for a very long time, for months now. And it does appear to be getting worse. I mean, even some of the AMD chips that have been in stock, like the 5600X and the 5800X, Micro Center has been selling those two near MSRP, but they just raised prices on both of those by $70, which is surprising because Micro Center is the cheapest and they don't scalp. So I would almost say that the supply is getting worse for AMD.
Woof. Well, I see, Patriot, you've got a chip on your table there, Lesson Roger, an AMD chip. I'm just curious. So we have AMD winning our face-off. Are you guys surprised by some of the insight Paul just shared?
No, it sounds, basically from what we've heard, yeah, it sounds like it's right on par.
Yeah, and so we talk about obviously we're talking SSDs. How much does your CPU, your choice of CPU affect how well your SSD performs?
Well, for 4x4 solutions, it's very important because right now the Ryzen chips or the Ryzen CPUs are the only ones that can do the 4x4. I know Intel's coming out with their version shortly that are going to be 4x4 capable as well. I don't know the actual launch date. But yeah, I mean, I think Paul's comments are fair. To be honest, you know, we work with both AMD and Intel, so we're fans of both, if you will. You know, not to get too or to be politically correct or anything, but you know, it's just one of those things where we love what they do on, you know, in their respective camps. I think they push each other, and that's good for us. It's good for the gamers. It's good for the market, right? So yeah, I mean, maybe AMD's won this round. It'll be interesting to see how Intel comes back in the future. But for us, we're big fans of both AMD and Intel, and yeah, we like to work with both of them.
And just, you know, we talk about stock on the show a lot, the CPU stock, the GPU stock, it's all terrible. Can we expect good stock of the VP4300 for a while? Are you guys affected by any of these issues?
We forecasted enough where I think should be okay going forward.
Awesome, glad to hear it. So we do have a comment on your face-off, Paul, from Rude Girl Snitska. They say people who want the 5900X are not going to Intel, especially if they already have an AM4 platform. They will wait for stock. It's interesting. Dedication, loyalty.
I mean, sure. I mean, I think I would add a clarifier to that. Maybe some people, or maybe even most. If they have an AM4 platform and the chip that they have is doing what they need, sure. You know, I mean, if they have like a 3900X or something like that, I imagine that most of them will wait. But, you know, let's say they have like a lower end previous gen chip, like a 3600, and they're doing video encoding or something like that, and they've waited 5 months. I think in some cases you will see some people come off of AM4. Maybe not. I mean, it's really hard to tell. And of course, there are AMD fans and people who just prefer AMD, and just like there are people who just prefer Intel. And, you know, it's kind of hard to, you know, I can't say what people are going to do, but, you know, I think that the longer that this goes on, the more chance that AMD is going to lose sales to absolutely. They are daily. There's no doubt about it, because they cannot provide chips. I mean, when you look at the 11, I'm writing a face off of the 11600K and the Ryzen 5 5600X. That is a wonderful chip, the Ryzen chip. The 5600X is probably one of the best chips ever made for its price point, in my opinion. I love that chip, but you can't buy it at a reasonable price. In Intel, you can go pick up the 11600K at MSR. It's lower than you would expect, even based on Intel's pricing. It is way cheap. Intel is super competitive on pricing right now. You can pick up their chips on sales, while you can't even find AMD's chips. That's going to have an impact. I mean, regardless of how good it is, it's not that great if you can't buy it. That's just my take.
Yeah, so if you haven't checked out the face-off, maybe you're shopping or you just want to see how the two camps are doing right now, definitely check it out. 11900K versus the 5900X. Paul wrote it, so you know it's accurate. Check it out. In the meantime, let's check out some of our questions from the viewers. First, I want to say hi to Green Bits, because they said hi to us. Thanks for joining the show, Green Bits. Here's a thought on the VP4300 drive. Definitely prosumer market. Just curious, is that how you guys see this drive, prosumer?
Absolutely. It's our fastest drive to date. So
great. And Rude Girl is asking about the warranty period for the drive.
5 years.
5 years. Easy. And then we have another question for you too from Ruru2. Are you guys making products for PS5 and Xbox?
I'll let you take
interesting discussions. Yeah, no, well, I mean, we do have some external storage products that we're developing right now that will be compatible with the PS5. It's not going to be the same architecture as what's internal as a 4x4 solution, but it will act as external storage, and you can definitely store games on it, play off of it. We've actually got a product right now called the Patriot PXD that performs the same function. The external drive that we're working on currently, though, it's going to be a little more gamey. It'll come out under the Viper line. So we are working on that. As for internal drives, we've had numerous discussions revolving around that. And that's something that Sony and Microsoft like to keep pretty close to the chest at this point. So unfortunately, we don't have any plans to bring to market any internal drives as far as upgrades go there.
What about plans to release those shirts you're wearing? Because Rude Girl would like one of those Patriot polos.
We'll put a word in with our marketing manager.
Send an email to sales@patriotmem.com. Rude Girl, we'll take care of you.
So let's see. I'm just looking through some of our questions. Rude Girl is asking, when is the drive available for purchase? Is it available? It's available right now, right?
That's right. Newegg and Amazon. You'll find it today.
Today's the official launch.
Awesome. And we have a general question from Smoke TV. I think you guys, Roger, unless you already mentioned you're not doing much in terms of PCIe 5, but they're asking, with PCIe 5 coming out with both the next AMD and Intel CPUs, how much faster will the M.2 PCIe 5 SSD be compared to 4.0? Either of you guys have any thoughts on that? How much of a speed boost we'll see with PCIe 5 drives?
Yeah, to be honest, I can't even answer that question. We really haven't studied that spec yet. Our focus has been on the 4.0 spec. So when we start focusing in on it, we can start releasing a little more information about it, I think.
Yeah, I think once we start talking to the controller houses, we'll have some idea.
Exactly.
But we haven't done that yet.
So just throw in that when you look at theoretical speed, you'll be looking at a doubling of the peak. PCIe 5.0 generally will be twice the speed of 4.0, twice the throughput. So right now you're looking at somewhere around 7 or 8 gigabytes a second is, I believe, off the top of my head, is the max for PCIe 4.0. So you're getting double that with PCIe 5.0, but that's just theoretically.
Yeah, right.
It could be like the first PCIe 4.0 SSDs that we saw in the market. They weren't nearly as fast as drives like this because they were actually designed to be PCIe 3.0. And they were just kind of bolted on an addition that made it PCIe 4.0. But now this drive has come out, and this is designed from the ground up to be PCIe 4.0, and you see these like, whoa, numbers, right? So PCIe 5, you might see a similar transition period where they're not really, the SSD controller makers aren't really using all of the available throughput right out of the gate. It might take some time.
Oh, well, let's hope that whenever it does come, there will actually be stock of these drives. But we got some time, so. All right, I think I've answered all of your questions. So thank you to everyone who's been hanging out with us. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can stay caught up on all the fun. And you can also listen to the show as a podcast if you prefer. And I want to thank my Tom's Hardware comrade, Paul Alcorn, for hanging out with me too. And a big thanks to Roger and Les from Patriot. It was great having you both. Do either of you or both of you have any last words for the viewers?
No. Thank you for joining us today and hearing our presentation.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Awesome. Well, that's our show. We'll see you next Thursday.